Alright, so today I'm going to talk a little bit about practical techniques in obtaining referent power. Right, and so this is kind of an outline of our program here. First, I'm going to discuss a little bit about power, why it's important, give a sort of what is its aspect within organizational development and how does it relate to people. And then we're going to define more specifically about referent power and what kind of source of power it is and how it can be used. Make a little bit about the connection between referent power and charisma, two things that are very related and very important in an organization. And then I'd like to provide some useful methods that will help build referent power in a person, as well as techniques for building charisma. And after that, we'll conclude the presentation. All right. So first, power. Power is the ability to get someone to do something or the ability to influence another person. Within the text, we're dividing it up between interpersonal power and structural power. Now, interpersonal power, those are things that are not evenly distributed amongst people in the group. A lot of that is held between each individual. Structural power is more something because of the organization or the structure of the social aspects within an organization that are given to people within that organization. Now, what I'm going to focus on, is an aspect of interpersonal power. Now, so interpersonal power is divided again in two different sections. One is organizational power sources, such as legitimate power or coercive power. And another is personal power sources, such as reward power or expert power or referent power. Legitimate power tends to come from a belief that a person has the formal right to make demands and expect complete compliance from others. Now, this formal right that comes from people in certain positions or in, if somebody sees somebody as being hired to a certain job, like is as supervisor, that person gets that legitimate power for the organization. Other sources of power, like reward power, that results from a person's ability to compensate another person for compliance. So if someone is able to give bonuses or incentives, then that provides power to that person to get other people to get things done. Expert power, that's usually based on a person's high levels of skill and knowledge. Say, for example, somebody who has worked in the industry for a really long time has sort of an expert power because they know how things work or they know a little bit more about the history, and so people trust that person to make decisions on there. Different sources of power include coercive power. That usually comes from a belief that a person can punish others for non-compliance, someone who can fire someone, or even sometimes we go into bullying people or forcing others to do what you want. And of course, referent power. Now, that is a result of a person's perceived attractiveness, worthiness, or a right to respect from others. And that's exactly what we're going to talk a lot more about today. And so referent power, that exists when a member perceives his or her goal to be closely aligned with that of another member. They may see each other as being on the same side or at least in the same reference group. And the interesting thing about referent power is that is power that's given to the other person voluntarily. So, for example, authoritative or legitimate power, all the other sources of power either comes from oneself or comes from something up above. Referent power, I think, is kind of interesting because it is given to somebody from below. Somebody is giving you that power, and it's gained because others respect you and they want your approval or they want to be like you. Now, charisma and its relationship to referent power. Now, obviously, a charismatic leader is someone who can create an atmosphere of motivation, usually based on emotional commitment to his or her vision, philosophy, and style onto his or her followers. Now, the reason I relate is because someone who has a high amount of referent power is typically a charismatic leader, someone who can get people to be in the same mindset, or someone who can who shares the same values enough as the other people will tend, if they have a high amount of that referent power, will tend to become a charismatic leader. So we're going to talk a little bit more about later, but I want to really focus on building referent power. There are many different ways. In the research that I was doing, I researched many different articles on how to build referent power within an organization, or build referent power within individuals. And so I'm going to talk about some of those techniques, and hopefully you'll be able to use some of those techniques in what you do. One of the first things we're going to focus on is showing acceptance and positive regard. Show to your team members or to your subordinates. Even you can do this even up and down. So show them that you accept what they believe in, and that you regard them positively. Always act supportively and helpful to people. Use sincere forms of ingratiation. In other words, if you are thankful for something, or if you want to at least show your gratitude for what somebody did for you, be sincere about it and actually express gratitude. Show thanks for what you've done. When people are in trouble, or people need you to defend themselves, then defend people and back people up when appropriate. Other things that you can do are unsolicited favors. Help people out without having to be asked to do something. Make certain self-sacrifices that show concern, and of course, keep promises. Genuinely caring about others builds referent power. Acquiring and maintaining referent power requires more than just flattery and favors and charm. Ultimately, it depends on the leader's character and integrity. Another article is saying that, to be perceived as personally cooperative, hardworking, and friendly in order to form a favorable impression, which will in turn motivate others to voluntarily comply and cooperate with a person's implementations. When a person is seen as a role model, they tend to be able to build that referent power. And when a person is seen as a member of the community, they are more capable of mobilizing voluntary cooperation or compliance from others. Now, the interesting thing about this article was that this was not just about individuals, but also about departments within an organization. So even a department can be seen as being cooperative and hardworking and friendly, or as a role model, or as a member of the community. And those departments have referent power that they can build. Different things such as practicing what you preach, being honest, earning the trust of others, and of course celebrating wins. All different things to help show that you care about your employees, or care about your teammates, and also to help them be able to trust you and to be able to rely on you. Now, not only is it important to gain referent power, but it's also important to maintain referent power. It's important to know that referent power can be lost. Somebody who is dishonest or somebody who's unreliable can actually degrade his or her source of referent power. Another article I was reading said that anger in the workplace affects power. It's interesting to note that even though it lowers the strength of referent power, anger can increase legitimate, coercive, and reward power. So one has to really think about what kind of power source they want to use the most. But it's also important to note that since referent power instills more commitment in employees than different organizational sources of power, anger should be used sparingly. In fact, in the text it says, when you have authority, a legitimate power, to order something done, an expert or referent-based influence approach is likely to achieve better results. Now, when you want to build charisma, another thing. Now, charisma can also be built or developed. To do this, you'd rather want to develop visionary thinking, be able to establish idealized goals that represent improvement over what's happening right now. Communicate your vision. Make sure your visions are articulated in a manner that's consistent with followers' needs. Have conviction. Different charismatic leaders are perceived as being strongly committed to their visions and willing to make sacrifices and take personal risk in achieving those goals. Also, you can exhibit extraordinary behaviors. Engage in behaviors that are typically unconventional or counter to established norms. And don't do this just for unconventional sake, but make sure that those behaviors are related to obtaining the objectives. And of course, developing self-confidence. charismatic leaders always have total confidence in their abilities to overcome obstacles. Now, those are some kind of high pie in the sky things, but if you really want to develop or build your charisma, there are some simple techniques that you can use. For example, when you are talking to others, use metaphors. Metaphors tend to invoke symbolism and help people simplify concepts and make a lot more closer connection with them. Use different stories, different anecdotes. Show sort of moral conviction within the things that you do, and express shared feelings with others. Make sure you set high expectations and communicate confidence in the things that you do. And use different contrast to frame and focus the message. Using lists is very important. In fact, lists kind of help produce the perception that you have a complete understanding of a topic. Different rhetorical questions are good. It actually helps keep a sort of a frame and draws interest in when you use rhetorical questions for people who are waiting for you to give them the answer. And of course, use different nonverbal strategies in your communication to help animate your words, to help add some personality. Now, it may be difficult, in conclusion, I just want to say, it can be difficult to quantify referent power, but that shouldn't be a reason not to try to build it or develop it in people. It can be accomplished through increasing trust and dependability. And so, if you offer positive reinforcements to others, such as encouragement or support, referent power can still in a higher sense of commitment to others, and a strong referent power can lead to good charismatic leadership. That's the bulk of my presentation. Thank you all for listening, and I wish you luck. Thanks.